Okay, this is Troy again. We're talking about our conversions, dealing with numbers that you're going to be encountering as you study electronics and as you do some of those formulas that you're needing to do. In the intro video, I introduced the concept by talking about gallons and talking about money. There's a couple of things that make it a lot easier whenever we're talking about volts and amps and watts and those sorts of things because of what we're going to be using are what we call the metric prefixes. There's two things about these metric prefixes that make them very, very easy to work with. One of them is that we are always talking about multiples of 10. And if you remember back in school, whenever you're dealing with a multiple of 10, if you're multiplying or dividing by 10 or 100 or 1,000, it's very easy to do. All you have to do is move the decimal point one way or the other. You got to remember which way to move it, but we'll get to that in just a second. By dealing with multiples of 10, that means that we don't have to remember things like there's 8 pints in a gallon. All we have to do is remember that we're going to move the decimal place either to the left or to the right, depending on which is needed. The other thing that is really easy as we're dealing with metric prefixes and engineering notation is that we always use multiples of 1,000. Everything works in threes. So anytime we're moving the decimal point, anytime we're looking at a difference between prefixes, it's always going to be 3 decimal places. You're going to move it 3 places to the left, you're going to move it 3 places to the right. You're never going to move a decimal point if you're not moving it 3 places. So those are two things that make it really easy for us to work with the engineering notation that we're going to be using. Now, there are some prefixes that you're going to want to be familiar with. These are the ones that you're going to be using most. And I do have a mnemonic device to help you remember what they are. You can think of another one if you want to. But here's a mnemonic device that you can use to remember these 9 prefixes that you're going to be encountering most often. And the mnemonic says, that giant megaphone killed 1 million microscopic naked people. Okay. It's a little weird, but it's something that you can remember. Now, the first letters of each one of those, except the number 1, of course, are going to give us the abbreviations that we need for these metric prefixes. That is T, giant G, megaphone M, all the way down. Now, notice real quickly that we do happen to have 3 of them that start with the letter M. The megaphone, the million, and the microscopic. Now, in our abbreviations, we'll notice that we have 3 different characters. For the megaphone, we're using a capital M. Notice it's up here with the other capital letters. The million is a lowercase m, and then the microscopic is the Greek letter mu. That is their version of the letter M. It's like the letter U, but it's got a little tail hanging off the left side of it. So those are the letters that are going to be used. Now, what are these representing? Well, these are representing those prefixes. Tera. In computers, we talk about a terabyte of memory, or giga, a gigabyte, mega, megabytes, kilo, kilobytes. Now, here we have the units right in the middle, and this is when we don't have a prefix at all. Then if we start getting on the small side of things, we have a milli, a micro, a nano, and a pico. The other thing that you are going to want to remember with each one of these, and again, these need to be remembered in order, and that's why I gave you the mnemonic device that you can use with these. But you do also want to remember, and again, remember everything works in threes, so starting with our units, which is 10 to the 0 power, that means we're not going to add or take away any decimal places here. Notice that they're going up by 3s, 10 to the 3rd, 10 to the 6th, 10 to the 9th, 10 to the 12th, or they're going down by 3s, the -3, -6, -9, -12. So you do want to be able to remember these in order. You want to remember the name to call it by, the abbreviation that it uses, and also what it's doing to the decimal place. 3 places, which way is it moving? So if we think about, okay, what are these numbers? How big are we talking? Of course, the units right in the middle is 1. We haven't changed anything. As we go up, every time we go up by a power of 3, we're going to add 3 zeros. We're going to move that decimal point 3 places to the right. So from 1, we go to 1,000, and that's what a kilo represents. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts. If you go another 3 places, 10 to the 6th power, then you have megawatts. That's 1,000,000 watts. Giga would be 1,000,000,000. Tera would be 1,000,000,000,000. We do the same thing on the small side as we're getting smaller and smaller. If we go to milli, like if we have 1 amp, we go to a milliamp. That's 1/1000th of an amp. If we were to go to a microamp, that's 1/1,000,000th of an amp. For nano, it's 1/1,000,000,000, and for pico, it's 1/1,000,000,000,000. And so these are the metric prefixes that we're going to be using. You want to make sure that you remember them in order. Use this mnemonic device, do something else if you need to. I'm also stacking them up with the smallest one on the bottom and the biggest one on the top. And there's a reason for that, so that as we start looking at the conversions, I'm going to show you how you can easily use this list, listed from smallest to largest, bottom to top, and be able to make those conversions very easily. That's coming up in the next video.